cross of Christ. Padre Pio used to say, Jesus gives the biggest share of his cross to his best friend. And some of you, his best friends, might quickly think, I wish he wouldn't be so chummy with me. St. Teresa of Avila, who I just quoted in that passage, one day was going through the countryside in Spain. She was driving in a horse and wagon in a carriage, and she was very sick. Most of the saints had a great deal of suffering in their lives, physical, emotional, spiritual. And St. Teresa was not unlike all the great saints. She had all kinds of aches and pains and illnesses, and she was very sick with a terrible migraine headache, and she was bouncing through the countryside. It was rainy, it was cold and damp, a miserable day. And I've been in that part of Spain, and it can be cold and just awful weather. Well, it was one such day. The wagon wheel hit a rut and dumped the carriage over, and it just put her right into a ditch full of mud. She was cold, sick, covered with mud all over her nice Carmelite religious habit. And she looked up and she said, "Oh Lord, if you treat your friends thus, no wonder you have so few of them." You see, even the saints, had their patience tested. They weren't infinite in their ability to carry the cross. They had limitation. So don't be too upset that you have limitations and that I have limitations. Approach it with humility, and a sense of humor goes a long way. I found out that a lot of the saints had a great sense of humor. A sense of humor in the face of suffering really is a powerful ally in your struggle. Padre Pio suffered for 50 years with the stigmata. He had tremendous pain from the wounds of Christ, which he had in his hands and his feet and his side. 50 years. One day, they had a big party for him on the 50th anniversary of his stigmata, and a man came up to him and said, "Oh, God bless you, Padre Pio. May he grant you 50 more. And Padre Pio looked at him in horror and said, "What did I ever do to you?" One day, a rather fancy rich lady came to the monastery. She was dressed up in very fine clothes, and Padre Pio was used to the country people. He'd come from a family of poor farmers, and he was used to the women coming to church in their old black dresses and their shawls, very poor people. But this lady was a wealthy lady, maybe nobility, and she was dressed in her finery, and she situated herself in the corridor between the friary and the monastery church, and she waylaid Padre Pio as he came through. And she grabbed him by the sleeve of his habit and said, "Now, Padre Pio, today is my birthday. Today is my 70th birthday. Now say something nice to me." And he smiled at her sweetly, and he leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Death is near." And he walked off. It is reported that another lady who was large, she could have played defensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers, very large, approached him and said, "Now, Padre Pio, what is it going to take to make me holy?" And he looked her up and down and he said, "About 16 Lents." And then he walked off. But he was nice to her, though. He smiled when he said it. You say, "Oh, that's cruel." Well, you had to be there. But many of the saints, they were not sourpusses. They were not dour, miserable human beings. They were people that could laugh. I have known some extremely holy people. I've known a couple people who will probably be canonized saints in due time. I mean, I don't know them well, but I met Mother Teresa, talked with her. She was at my ordination. The Holy Father, John Paul II, the founder of my own religious congregation, Father Jim Flanagan. I met some, they might not be canonized. Oh, I think Mother Teresa and the Holy Father will be for sure. But I've known many good holy people. Every single one of them seemed to have a pretty good sense of humor. They all experienced a lot of pain in their life. And they found that that sense of humor helped them to get through it. The devil hates you to be happy. He hates it. He doesn't want you to have any peace or joy. I think that some comedians like Bob Hope, and as long as the humor is wholesome, you know, and nothing impure or anything, but I think they help humanity. You know, they say that laughing even helps cancer. People recover sometimes from cancer when they have regular humor. They've done research on it, and they've actually had periods of time where they were given a half hour a day of things to make them laugh, you know, comedy shows or whatever, and they found that it contributed significantly to their healing. When I was in that very, very dark period in my life, when I had lost everything in the world, there is a pedagogical and purifying principle at work in human suffering. I had gone from a poor boy to a very wealthy man. I had achieved the American dream. I went on dates with movie stars. I went to parties with rock stars. I drove a Ferrari through Beverly Hills, lived in $1 million mansion on the beach, had a yacht, on and on and on. And then I lost it all through my own stupidity. I almost died. I lost everything. I became so desolate. For 3 years, I was absolutely desolate. I had nothing. I lost everything. I was homeless in the streets of Los Angeles after having been a multimillionaire. Now, it's one thing to grow up poor and to stay poor all your life. You can be happy without having very much. But it's another thing to grow up poor, become very wealthy, and then to become absolutely destitute and be homeless in the street with the clothes on your back, no place to live, nothing to eat, not a nickel in your pocket, not a friend in the world. Darkness and desolation become your daily companions. I've been there and done that. 3 years of pain, terrible pain. I remember one day stopping in the streets in Los Angeles. It was so horrible. I stopped and said to myself out loud, what is this? What is this? The pain, emotional pain, was so intense, why I could scarcely stand it. The threat, the specter of suicide hung over me for years. I never attempted it. I grew up in the old church when they said if you kill yourself, you go to hell. And somehow I believed it. So I wasn't willing to go that far, no matter how miserable I was. So I never attempted it. But I was terribly depressed, terribly anxious, in pain, in very great pain. I remember coming home to my mother's house, and it went from bad to worse, even though that was a good place, but the devil knew his grip was loosening on me. And he redoubled his efforts to do me in. I remember one night, I was in terrible emotional pain. I went to bed and I slept, and now I don't put great stock in dreams and so forth. Most dreams are just the product of our own human imagination. They're perfectly natural and normal. But every once in a while, it is possible for God or the devil to speak through dreams, to influence us through dreams. Most of them, the vast majority of dreams, they come from our own psyche. They're natural. That just totally normal. Once in a while, though, from God, from the devil, it can and does happen. Well, in the depths of my darkness, my pain, I had a hilarious dream. It was silly. I can't even recount it because it wouldn't sound funny. But this picture, this spectacle, and I woke myself up. I laughed so hard that I woke myself up and my stomach hurt from laughing so hard. And I felt so good all day as a result of some of these things you discern by their effects. I have no doubt that some angel, maybe my guardian angel, had somehow transmitted this hilarious dream to me, which came I saw some outlandish character in a duck marsh with some wild duck decoying ducks down. The ducks came down, took a look at that, and started laughing out loud. And I saw this ridiculous cartoon kind of dream, and I howled, and something changed inside of me. The darkness was dispersed for a while. That didn't come from the devil. I don't even think it came from me. I don't know where I could have conjured up something as wild as that. I think I had a little help. Another time when I was in Europe studying, I was about to be ordained a priest. I was within 60 days of ordination. It was all set. All our paperwork had gone in. I was approved. The Pope was going to ordain me a priest. Wow. Then one Friday, I came down terrible pain, and I had to go to the hospital, and I needed emergency surgery. And I went into the university I went to had a major medical teaching facility. And so a doctor, a surgeon, came out with 5 interns and 12 student nurses to watch the surgery. It was painful and it was humiliating. Well, they anesthetized me with a local anesthetic, and it didn't take. And they began to cut. And the pain was so horrible, I couldn't speak. I couldn't tell the doctor. He's saying in Spanish. I didn't speak Spanish very well, but the doctor is going in a very calm voice like doctors do. Now, how's that? Does that feel better now? And how's that? Do you have any pain? I was in shock. My mouth wouldn't move. He could have been murdering me right on the spot. I wouldn't have said anything. In the first place, I couldn't have thought of it in Spanish. In the second place, my mouth wouldn't move. Well, it finished, and I was almost in shock. Actually, during the surgery, I was drifting in and out of shock. Later, I had to go back for a series of quasi-surgical procedures where they opened the wound so that it would heal properly. No anesthetic, no nothing. I was surprised they didn't give me a bullet to bite on. I remember in the middle of the surgery, I imagined that I heard John Wayne's voice. Now, come on, buckaroo. Be a man about it. You can take it. My friend and I, who were studying together in that foreign country, I was in terrible pain for 2 weeks. We would laugh about it. We would make up jokes, and it relieved the pain. It took my mind off it for a while, and time passed. I was worried I wouldn't be ordained because I wouldn't be able to go. I wouldn't be well in time. But everything turned out well. Oh, I was healed wonderfully. My grandmother, while I was on the operating table, my grandmother, 94 years old, rosary praying, daily communicant lady all her life, my grandmother was in her last suffering. She died. She suffered and she died as I was on the operating table. There's an affinity, there's a closeness, something going on there. I don't know, it's not just a coincidence. My grandmother helped me get to the priesthood. That suffering helped me get to the priesthood. There is not only an instructive dimension in suffering united to the suffering of Christ, there's a purifying dimension to it. Purgatory is the final purification. The cross purifies us. It capacitates us to receive grace, not just for